My dreams is to become a successful singer and guitarist and performers music around the world.
Every season of
America's Got Talent didn't tell you this about Nene Royal. A 15-year-old girl steps onto the biggest stage of her life, and within 90 seconds she has 4 adults who have seen thousands of auditions on their feet. That part, you already know. What almost nobody talked about afterward is where she actually came from, what she had already survived to get there, and the strange, almost impossible coincidence tangled up in the very song she picked. Stay with me, because the real story only starts after the applause ends. On a Tuesday night in July 2026, a teenager named Nene Royal walked out onto the stage of America's Got Talent at the Pasadena Civic Auditorium, looking like she might turn around and walk right back off. She was quiet. She laughed nervously at her own answers. She told the judges she was turning 16 the very next day, and the room did what rooms do on television, breaking into a spontaneous happy birthday. She said, in a small voice, that her dream was to be a superstar on tour someday. It sounded like exactly the kind of thing a shy teenager says when she doesn't quite believe it herself. Then she picked up her guitar, and the entire room changed shape. What came out of her was a rocked-up, distortion-heavy version of the Cranberries' 1994 classic Zombie, played on an Ibanez electric guitar through a Fender amp, complete with fast two-hand tapping and a vocal delivery that swung between delicate and full-throated in the space of a few bars. Within a minute, the crowd was singing the chorus back at her. Host Terry Crews was reportedly losing his mind on the side of the stage. Judge Sofia Vergara called the performance spectacular and told her she had a real shot at going far in the competition. Howie Mandel said flatly that she was a rock star. Mel B praised her vocal control and told her the combination of her voice and her guitar work felt like a perfect match. And Simon Cowell, a man not exactly famous for handing out compliments, said her tone felt genuinely authentic, and that the rough edges of the performance were exactly what made it work for him. 4 yeses. She was through to the next round. That much made it onto your screen. Here's what usually gets left on the cutting room floor. Let's start with the setting, because it matters more than most viewers realize. The Pasadena Civic Auditorium seats around 3,000 people, and the AGT judging panel has watched acts of every kind walk through those doors for over a decade. These are people who are professionally hard to impress. Sofia Vergara doesn't hand out praise like that lightly. Simon Cowell has built an entire career on being the man who tells contestants exactly why they aren't good enough. When 4 judges who have collectively sat through tens of thousands of auditions all vote yes within the same minute, that isn't a fluke of clever editing. Something real happened in that room. But something real doesn't just appear out of thin air on a random Tuesday night. It gets built slowly, over years, somewhere far away from any camera. Long before she ever stood under studio lighting, Nene Royal was already a fixture at the NACA Weekend Market in Phuket, playing live sets most Saturdays for a crowd that hadn't come to see her. Picture it honestly, an open guitar case on the pavement, an amplifier running off a market stall's power strip, motorbikes weaving past, food stalls sizzling nearby, and a teenage girl playing her heart out to tourists who are mostly there for cheap souvenirs. That is not the fairy tale version of Discovered Overnight. That is hours and hours of unglamorous, often ignored practice, week after week, with no guarantee that any of it would ever lead anywhere. If you've ever poured effort into something that most people walked straight past without noticing, you already understand the particular kind of resilience that builds. A market crowd that isn't listening teaches you something a cheering television audience never could. By the time she got to Pasadena, an auditorium full of strangers who had already chosen to pay attention to her was, in a strange way, the easy part. Reports have noted that even now, with millions of views piling up on her AGT clip, Nene has continued showing up to play the NACA Weekend Market on weekends, at least for the time being. That detail alone tells you a lot about who she is underneath the viral moment. This isn't someone who treated busking as a stepping stone to abandon the instant something bigger came along. It's a routine she built her identity around, and by most accounts she hasn't rushed to walk away from it just because a television audience finally caught up to what her local crowd already knew. And the busking wasn't the whole story either. Nene didn't come up through formal lessons or a prestigious music academy. By her own account and by what's been reported, She is largely self-taught, picking up the guitar somewhere around age 6 or 7 and learning almost entirely by watching videos online and copying what she heard until her fingers caught up with what was in her head. That is an enormous amount of quiet, repetitive, unrewarded work for a child to put involuntarily. Long before age 8, she had also performed live with local acts including Ozone Band and Minahat, playing rock and metal covers well outside anything you'd expect from a typical teenage hobbyist. The instrument brand Enya Music took notice early and named her a featured artist while she was still in school, an endorsement plenty of far more experienced musicians spend years chasing without success. Her online following had already crossed 3 million people across platforms before her AGT audition ever aired, built largely on viral covers of songs like Nirvana's Smells Like Teen Spirit and System of a Down's Sugar and Chop Suey. Those aren't easy songs to cover convincingly. That kind of following doesn't happen by accident, and it didn't happen because of a television show. It happened because, for years, people in Thailand and increasingly around the world were already watching her. That brings us to the trophies nobody mentioned on stage. In October 2023, Nene placed second at the Overdrive Guitar Contest, a competition respected enough in Thailand to carry its own nickname among fans, the Guitar Battle. 2 years later, in September 2025, she was named an outstanding player at the King Power Band competition, another serious mark of recognition from people who judge live musicianship for a living, not internet virality. She had also already appeared on Thai television alongside established professional musicians. None of that made it into the 90-second package that aired on your screen, because television needs an underdog story, and overnight discovery edits a lot cleaner than years of consistent, quietly impressive work. The truth is less tidy and, honestly, more impressive. She wasn't a beginner who got lucky. She was a decorated, tested performer who happened to be walking onto a bigger stage than usual. Think about what that actually feels like from the inside. You spend years grinding through practice sessions nobody records, competing in contests most people outside your own country have never heard of, slowly building a reputation brick by brick. Then one night, one clip, one television edit rewrites your entire public story into unknown teenager comes out of nowhere. It's not malicious, it's just how television works. Producers need a clean, digestible arc, and instant discovery is a much easier sell than years of quiet, consistent excellence. But if you were the one who put in those years, watching the internet act like you appeared from nothing has to sting just a little, even while you're grateful for the opportunity. Nene doesn't seem to have publicly complained about any of that. She just kept playing, and let the difference between the two versions of her story speak for itself. Now here's the part of the story that almost nobody in that cheering studio audience seemed to know anything about, and it's worth slowing down for, because it changes how the whole performance lands. Zombie is not just an angsty 90s rock song. It's a protest song, and a deeply painful one. Dolores O'Riordan of the Cranberries wrote it after the IRA planted bombs in litter bins in the English town of Warrington in March 1993. Those bombs killed 2 children, 3-year-old Jonathan Ball and 12-year-old Tim Parry, and injured dozens of other people. O'Riordan was out on tour when she heard the news, and she funneled her grief and anger directly into the song. She wasn't shy about what she meant by it either. She pushed back hard against people who assumed, simply because she was Irish, that she must sympathize with paramilitary violence, and she made clear in interviews that the killing being done in the name of a cause had nothing to do with her or with ordinary people like her. The song even reaches back to the 1916 Easter Rising, framing decades of violence as a cycle that keeps repeating while children keep paying the price for it. Sit with that for a second. Next to the image of a smiling teenager one day away from turning 16, throwing her whole body into that chorus on a glittering competition stage, with an audience clapping along, most of them very likely having no idea they were cheering for a song written out of grief over a real terrorist attack that killed 2 little boys. That doesn't make her performance wrong, or careless, or disrespectful. If anything, there's something quietly moving about a teenager from the other side of the planet, decades removed from the tragedy that inspired the song, still finding something true enough in it to throw her whole voice behind it. 2 teenagers, 30 years apart, both refusing to stay quiet, even if they were never speaking about the exact same thing. It's worth remembering that O'Riordan spent years pushing back against people who wanted to flatten her into a symbol she never asked to be. She wrote from a place of grief, not politics for its own sake. and she was explicit that the song was about mourning innocent lives, not picking a side in a decades-long conflict. That distinction tends to get lost once a song becomes this famous, sung by crowds who know the melody far better than the history behind it. It happened at Irish rugby matches. It happened, in its own quiet way, on that AGT stage too. None of that makes the moment any less powerful. If anything, it's a reminder of how a piece of music can outgrow the specific tragedy that produced it and become a vessel for whatever pain or defiance a new generation of listeners brings to it. What makes this stranger still is the timing. Zombie has an odd habit of refusing to fade away.